Greetings and salutations, internetizens. This is I, Wolfotech, and here we are with another delightful video from me to you to the internet. This is for Warhammer Age of Sigmar. This is specifically the Battletome for Nighthaunt from the second edition of Age of Sigmar. This book is 88 pages. Which is, just so you know, is bigger than Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition's Spelljammer books, which are only going to be 64 pages approximately each. I'm using my finger as a reference for how thick the book is. It is an incredibly beautiful book. It has a lot of lore and game mechanics in it, specifically for 2nd edition, but also the world in general, and specifically revolving around the Grand Alliance death and Nighthaunt. As it says, it's Death Battletome Nighthaunt. This is actually a very funny, dark humor book. The reason why I chose Nighthaunt is that it's a simple faction to paint. It's simple faction to unpaint and assemble. I love scary imagery and monsters and all kinds of stuff like that. I could use Nighthaunt as a army in a faction within my Dungeons & Dragons campaigns. So my players could, at some point in the future, when I get all my Nighthaunt models made out, I could set them down on the battlefield and they could be battling some Nighthaunt. Third thing is I love puns, dark humor, nerd jokes, dark ironic tales and fables, and Nighthaunt is just loaded beautifully with dark twisted jokes and ironic fates of people seeking power and using grief and manipulation, and then being inflicted with grief as a punishment for their manipulation of grief and fear. So there you go. It is a beautiful book. This is a very beautiful scene of Nighthaunt in action, being an absolute terror to its opponents. The origin of Nighthaunt revolves around the Black Pyramid and Nagash's scheme to gain greater power as a god over all realms of death, and the fun little antics of the fun little rat people, the Skaven, just showing up, just running around like crazy, doing chaos stuff, and causing Nagash's incredibly immaculate and exact plan to just go off kilter and malfunction to hilarious, and in the case of Nighthaunt, horrifying conclusion. This is a beautiful little section talking about the origin of the Age of Sigmar and relating it to Nighthaunt, the realm of death, and so forth, in a little poetic section. You got the beautiful table of contents here, and you got Lady Olinder as well as her procession of Nighthaunt. And then you have the history of Nighthaunt, which is basically what I just told you right there. Beautiful artwork. This book is loaded with beautiful artwork. Okay, seriously. All kinds of stuff like this. It characterizes the nature of Nighthaunt and its various factions and units, giving them history and story, the rise and terror of Nighthaunt, and their absolute hatred of the living, and particularly the hatred of Stormcast Eternals, which are people who have died, and Sigmar basically reached in and grabbed their souls. No, not going to the realm of death. You come with me and fight the good fight against chaos. And Nighthaunt is like, our mission is to literally rip your souls out of those bodies and bring you back to the realm of the dead, because you belong in the realm of the dead, because you died, and you belong to our master Nagash. All is one, and all is one under Nagash. You got a beautiful scene with Lady Olinder and her procession hanging out with our one and true king, Nagash. And it's just loaded, as I said before, beautiful artwork, telling you the lore of the world, the history, how Nighthaunt is related to various things. Nighthaunt is organized into ghostly processions. This is both in 2nd and 3rd edition. You got Lady Olinder, the Mortok of Grief, and you got Kurdos Valentine, the Craven King. You got the people under them, and then you have the different subgroups. You got the story of Lady Olinder, the Mortok of Grief. She was a highly manipulative woman who was incredibly beautiful and sweet-talking. They could just wrap and manipulate people around her fingers. And she worked her way into marrying the future king of a kingdom. And when she basically got married to them, or something in that line somewhere, I think it's either before or after the wedding. I can't remember. For exact details, you need to read the book. But she basically then arranged for his death. The king died. She played the part of the grieving queen for the rest of her life, manipulating everyone around her for power and ha. She died. She rose. Nagash realized that Lady Olinder was exceedingly powerful in manipulating and binding souls to her, that he basically took her, imparted a bit of his power in her, but also twisted some stuff so that A, she's now in charge of Nighthaunt, but B, she A, feels all the pain and grief of all the mortal realms, and since she was an incredibly beautiful woman, and she used her beauty as a means of manipulating people, he horribly fudged up her face, which is why she always is wearing a veil, because if she takes off her veil in combat, she could do insane damage to her opponent when she does that. It's one of the few ranged attacks Nighthaunt has back in 2nd edition. It's still a darn good one in newer editions, in the newer edition, for her to have. Just raise the veil, fudge up someone really horrifyingly bad. If they roll badly, they're done for. Then you got Kurdos Valentine, the Craven King. He was a king of another nation at some other point in time or history. And he was also a powerful military leader and general who had a incredible amount of will of power to control and drive people into action. And he also was a hardcore backstabber. There's a bunch of history on him in the book. But basically, Nagash found it very interesting that Olinder was really good as a manipulator and controller of masses, but she needed someone to back her up as a general for tactical combats and stuff like that, and someone else to balance her in various ways. So he grabbed Kurdos Valentine and basically enslaved him to Lady Olinder. Which is really fun because Kurdos Valentine was basically an individual who could not be subdued by other people, and he had basically a relentless will to drive towards power. So the standard dark humor of Nighthaunt where everyone's punishment is basically ironic fate of the sins and the arrogance of their past life, their original life. Yeah. So he's been basically enslaved to Lady Olinder, and because he was such an incredibly brave and forceful-willed person, Nagash was really fun and called him the Craven King. And he cannot speak anything other than a whisper unless giving specific orders for combat. So, a person who is known for their incredible force of will and their booming voice in command of situations was reduced down to a squeaky little mouse that could not speak much more than just a low whisper, a very weak whisper, unless he was giving specific orders in how to fight opponents or stuff like that in battle. So, and then you have Rankenor the Grimhealer, the Knights of Shrouds, and so forth. Rankenor the Grimhealer, was a famous person who whole life mission was to find the cure for death. So he's now in the service of the god of death, and as a punishment, he has to kill everyone. And his specific mission is to kill everyone that is a healer, or a nurse, a doctor, whatever. He was in his original life, he was a protector of life and a seeker of the cure to death. And Nagash basically says, screw you, and now you are on a mission for eternity to brutally murder and kill anyone who tries to heal or cure death. Interestingly enough, there's a fun history of Nagash and his solution to death. But hey, there's the Knights of Shrouds. There's a fun little section describing their history. You got a fun little section on the Spirits of Torment and the Chain Ghasts, Wraith Captains, Wraith Hosts, and so forth, which breaks down into all small groups like Grimghast Reapers, Glaive Wraith Stalkers, Bladegeist Revenants, Dreadscythe Harridans. Dreadscythe Harridans are really interesting because they used to be doctors and nurses, but their hands were horribly warped and twisted into weapons. And so instead of running up to people and healing them, they now run up to people and slash them to pieces. So there, Nagash is a pretty twisted, evil, scary person. Yes, you got the Spectral Shock Force reference, like Spirit Hosts, Hex Wraiths, the Black Coach, Rapid Forces. Got a beautiful scene with Lady Olinder on the battlefield, along with the Black Coach. You got image of Kurdos Valentine on his model, as well as Lady Olinder. And this whole book is just loaded with lore and artwork. But also, as you get to... a good chunk of this book is lore and artwork, as I said, which is, if you really want to get into the lore of Warhammer Age of Sigmar, and you just want to go back and grab a cheaper book, you go ahead and grab this book. And you could, and there's also a nice little guide on painting and the different techniques and of painting various objects to create different effects. Shock and Terror. Section on Nighthaunt, Processions, as well as Allegiant abilities. Command traits, spell lores. Artifacts of Power, Death from Above, Death from Within, Battle Plan, Path to Glory, which is basically a campaign setup. Nighthaunt Warband tables. You go into the various war scrolls for various different processions. War Scroll Battalion or Procession. They changed that out for 3rd edition, so that's not really relevant anymore. They swapped it in for a new mechanic. I'll get into that when it gets to that. But anyways, you got Lady Olinder and her stats, which are updated in the new book and regularly updated every 6 to 12 months for points or stuff. You got Kurdos Valentine, Rankinor the Gramehaler, Knight of Shrouds, Ethereal Stade, Guardian of Souls. You got all the standard stuff. I've actually covered this before in various other books. Spirit of Torment. Their specialty is basically hunting down souls and capturing them. Tomb Banshee. And it just keeps going and going. The Black Coach, which is the big unit in Nighthaunt. You got the Shyish. These are various endless spells back here. The Shyish Reaper, the Mortalis Temenexus, the Vault of Souls. And you got pitch battle information back here. And then that's the end of the book right there. And it's actually a rather delightful book. It's a great read to go through. It doesn't take you too long because there's tons of beautiful artwork in here. I'm not joking. There's tons of beautiful artwork in here. Good text. It's well organized. So, yeah. I'm not going to do any review scores or preliminary review scores simply just because I am relatively new to playing war games and Warhammer Age of Sigmar. So, value side, it's hard to say. However, it is important to note that if you were to get into like an army like Nighthaunt or Orc War Clans or something like that, or any other army, and they might not be the strongest army right now, you can get in, still have fun, keep the same army, just rearrange, adjust stuff, strategies, things like that. And at some point in the future, as Games Workshop updates and adjusts the rules from season to season to edition, your army will rise and fall in the meta a little bit. And you will get a lot more wins or a lot less few wins. The meta in Age of Sigmar is such that from my conversations with various people within the Warhammer Age of Sigmar community is that really good players with the bottom tier armies can beat players with top tier armies that are just moderate to weak skill. And it's fairly well balanced overall compared to, say, Warhammer 40k, which is like you can have an army in the top tier, you could be okay, and you could wreck house. And a really good player with a bottom tier army will struggle to even get anywhere against you. Where in Warhammer Age of Sigmar, it's more balanced. You're not completely screwed out. If you're a really good player, you can beat a person using a top tier army. So, right now, Nighthaunt has received recently, not in a few months ago, received the new 3rd edition book. This is the 2nd edition book. The new 3rd edition book has a red border on it. I really wish they used new artwork for it, but okay. But anyways, they received a new book, and Nighthaunt received new units to it. Some more ranged units, more speed striky units, stuff like that. More units that are capable with magic. So Nighthaunt was in 2nd edition was a army that was a rapid swarm army. I like to call it a rapid swarm army, where they basically they start on one side of the field, and they move along the table really fast and overwhelm their opponent. It's sort of like my term for a Death Star, where they are basically in a cluster and they move up and then just mow over targets in a rapid succession. It's kind of like the Lord of the Rings, the Return of the King, where Aragorn calls upon the army of the dead, and the army of the dead shows up like a wall and hits the opposing side and knocks them out. That's basically the concept behind Nighthaunt. You want to be like, you want a swarm of undead ghosts. You want them to be fairly close to each other so you can buff off of your auras, your Holy Within auras, to crank your attack power and your penetration up way high. And then you basically roll into your opposing army. And because they're ghosts, they're ethereal, and they fly. And this is one of the few armies that is across the board. They all fly. They all are ethereal. So they can literally just like through terrain, don't care, over rocky surfaces, stuff that would slow down armies, that cost them movement to go up and over an object or around a object, as per rules in Warhammer Age of Sigmar or Warhammer 40k. Nighthaunt is like, screw you, I'm right through that. There's a wall there. I go right through it. There's a ledge, there's a hill that goes down. I just go right over it. Doesn't matter. I just right on you. So the basic theory and how I understand how they work is that you basically want to move quickly. You just want to roll over your opponents in a ball, and you just want to make it really terrifying for them to all of a sudden be enveloped with ghosts. And being that they have high movement and they're ghosts, they are capable of charging through enemies. So if you have like the various cavalry units in here for Nighthaunt, various members of the cavalry units have damaging effects when they charge through targets. So you could say, in the case of Nighthaunt, you could charge through an enemy line of soldiers with the Dread Blade Harrow. You could have like a line of chain ghasts get up onto an opponent and lock them up, and then you could have the Dread Blade Harrow rush through as a wave. And because they have such high movement, they can travel through the enemy line and then stop on the other side and come back. And because of various abilities with Nighthaunt, they could charge through, do damage by physically traveling through a target and messing up their opponents, and while you are locking them up with another set of units on the front side, so they can't retreat away. And all of a sudden you have army, you have your unit here, you got your enemy here, you have your ghost horses here. Ghost horses get up, they charge through, they jump through your enemy line, do damage to your enemy line. Your front line is locking them in place, they can't escape, and you can take your horses and stick them on your backside of your enemy, and you're pincering and tearing them apart from both sides. And you end up with a lot of fun flowing play. The movement on the Dreadblade Harrow is 12, which is really good. Movement on Spirit of Torment is 6, which is actually pretty good. Everything Nighthaunt is like literally like 6s and 12s. There's hardly anything that's ever... You got Rankenor the Gramehealer, which is 14. Kurdos and Lady Olinder is in the bottom of 6. A lot of other armies are like 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, maybe 8. And then you have a few other armies that do have some 12 movement units in it. But Nighthaunt exists in this special nature or state of that they can quickly flow through areas, and they could travel through terrain, get to a target, attack it in a swarm. You could pile on. If you can keep your auras together, you can do a lot of damage hacking away with ghosts. That is the general theory, and they now have some good. They now have some more range options and magic options that came out in the past few months. So hey, that's interesting. So yet again, thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and consider subscribing. And I hope you have a delightful day, a nice night, a wonderful weekend, a magnificent month, and see you next time.